Solomon, the 900s, like 970, 950, around then. And at this point, he was not king. He had been, he killed Goliath, and then he came to work in the kingdom of King Saul, playing music, and we know that King Saul had mental illness. We studied this a couple of years ago. He had paranoia, he had depression, like they say David's music lifted him up, but he alternated between loving David and hating David and thinking David was trying to kill him. He was paranoid, or he's trying to usurp him. And at the same time, he gave David, before this, his daughter Michal to be his wife, and David married her. And then suddenly Saul decided he had to kill David, and Michal warned David, and David jumped out the window and escaped. So basically, he's wandering around the countryside. He has like 400 followers and living and sort of hiding, kind of like Robin Hood, but he's not giving anything to anybody else. Like these men living out, on the land and on the run, kind of. And when this story starts, and he has already Michal, and I think he has 2 wives already. And yet, men have many wives in those times. And this is a story about his encounter with a woman named Abigail, who I think was probably older than he. Let's say he was in his 20s, she was 30 or in her early 30s, still considered by the Midrash 4 of the most beautiful women in the Bible. So we know Rachav was considered beautiful, Abigail's considered beautiful. Who else?
Yeah, Rebecca?
Not Deborah. She wasn't, they never talk about her beauty, her wisdom, and this and that. I think sometimes they say Sarah was very beautiful and stuff, and Esther, I guess.
Yeah.
But Abigail was considered very beautiful, and it's even mentioned here. So first we're going to read the text, the story. It's just 1 chapter. And we can look at why she was considered a prophet, and the way women won men over in biblical times was really to, I wouldn't say humiliate, but completely, become subservient and play on the man's ego, was the way that they got what they needed. They bowed, they said, "Oh, I'm your servant, I'm your maid servant," or whatever. And then it was like softening up the man, David, to hear what they had to say. So, and she was a very smart woman who didn't need to do this, but she knew that she had to do this. Also, it was a way of, I think, psychologically, because they talk about this a bit in one of the commentaries. There's these marauding band of 400 men. So we know it's going on in the Ukraine. What happens when men come upon women or, vulnerable women? There's a rape. There's the possibility of rape. So one of the ways also is to play on their ego, flatter them or whatever. And the man is more likely to feel like a protector than an aggressor. So we see this kind of psychological treatment of David. I mean, she doesn't know David. She just knows men. You know what I mean? I'm not saying that David would have raped her, but she doesn't know. She's never seen him before. And he's with a huge group of men. And also her husband has offended him. And that was one of the ways we know since for 5,000, if not longer years, that men revenge themselves on other men was to rape their women. That was the way they humiliated their men, was to do something to their women. So that was even more of a reason to be smart, manipulative, psychologically astute in order to protect herself. So we see all of that in this character of Abigail, as opposed to Deborah, who just had status. Maybe she was older also. I don't know. She wasn't beautiful. She was older. She had authority. She didn't have that fear. But this very beautiful women in particular do. So I think we keep all that in mind as we look at this text, and we can talk about it. So we'll read this first. Sure. Okay, so it's all in the first book of Samuel, chapter 25 is the story. So it starts with her husband. So who wants to read? Let's just set it up. Stacy, why don't you read?
Okay. Now there was a man in Maon whose business was in Carmel.
I just want to say, Carmel is Haifa, right? That's Haifa.
Oh.
Carmel. Go ahead.
Okay. And the man was very rich. He had 3,000 sheep and 1,000 goats, and he was sharing his sheep in Carmel. The name of the man was Nabal, and the name of his wife Abigail. And she was a woman of good understanding and beautiful appearance, but the man was harsh and evil in his doings. He was of the house of Caleb.
Okay, so in the very beginning, they say she was wise and beautiful. So right away, this is a special woman, but she was married to a harsh, evil, cruel husband because she was probably married off very young to him. I mean, probably her family thought, look, he has 3,000 sheep, 1,000 goats. This is, a good deal for us. We get to align ourselves with this family. People use their daughters as pawns, as ways to make alliances. The women had no say in those times. Daughters were just property. So were sons in a way, but differently. And he was from the house of Caleb. And the commentary says, why did they mention that? Because David was from the house of Judah. And apparently kingship also could come from Caleb. Maybe he was in Judah also. So anyway, they're saying he was also from a high-born tribe. Okay, one more.
Okay. Did you want me to continue?
Yes. Somebody want to say something? Oh, okay, go ahead.
When David heard in the wilderness that Nabal was shearing his sheep, David sent 10 young men. And David said to the young men, go up to Carmel, go to Nabal and greet him in my name. And thus you shall say to him who lives in prosperity, peace be to you, peace to your house, and peace to all that you have. Now I have heard that you have shearers. Your shepherds were with us, and we did not hurt them, nor was there anything missing from them all the while they were in Carmel. Ask your young men, and they will tell you. Therefore, let my young men find favor in your eyes, for we come on a feast day. Please give whatever comes to your hand to your servants and to your son David.
Okay. Basically, what's he saying? What is he saying? He's saying, do you have any understanding of what he's saying, Lori?
Well, he's making the case that his young men are trustworthy and, should be seen in favor.
Okay, they're trustworthy.
As coming in peace, maybe, or something.
Why are they trustworthy?
Well, because they didn't steal anything. They didn't take your sheep. They didn't do anything to them.
Right. And so the commentaries say there's a veiled threat here.
That's what I was going to say.
What were you going to say?
He didn't rape and pillage everything, so therefore
Right.
we'd like to participate in the feast.
Wait, yet.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
We didn't do it yet.
I thought it was a threat.
Yeah. So we haven't done it yet, even though there's a lot of us out here. And so why don't you give us, some food and lodging, and, you have I hear you're sheep shearing, you have money. Why don't you, and he sends 10 to one man. It's kind of like I'm actually rewatching The Sopranos right now. And it's kind of like, they pound on the door and it's like 2 or 3 of these guys and they go, yeah, hello, you owe us. And so and even it's written in the commentaries, they were kind of like, it was an extortion racket. They would live by going around and not doing anything, but implying that it could happen. But why don't you, out of the with all this flowery language, why don't you be gracious and give us something? If you don't, though, dot, dot, dot.
Yeah, we'll take it anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's how, they go to this guy Naval. And I mean, I don't know how many of you read ahead, but what do you think Naval says? Anybody want to guess?
Oh,
Think-
I doubt he was agreeable.
do you think he did it? Said yes?
No.
not right away.
Okay, so it's very interesting because don't forget he's a bit of a okay, so
And evil.
when David's young men came, they spoke to Nabal according to all these words in the name and waited. Okay, verse 10, who wants to read? Come on, Susan.
Then Nabal answered David's servants and said, "Who is David? And who is the son of Jesse? There are many servants nowadays who break away each one from his master. Shall I then take my bread and water and my meat that I have killed from my shearers and give it to men when I don't know where they are from?"
In other words, he could be a runaway slave for all I know. Who the hell is this guy? I never heard of him. And there are these servants who leave. And what? You're like a slave, a servant? They say servant. I'm sure it's probably slave in Hebrew. I should feed you? Okay, so keep going, Susan.
So David's young men turned on their heels and went back, and they came and told him all these words. Then David said to his men, "Every man gird on his sword." So every man girded on his sword, and David also girded on his sword. And about 400 men went with David, and 200 stayed with the supplies.
So I was wrong. There were 600 men in his gang.
Wow.
All right, let's go. Put on your swords. We're going. So we have, David is such an interesting character. I mean, if you ever study the text, he was a very mixed bag. He was a criminal. He was a lover. He was wise. He was impetuous. And it's interesting that he was chosen and all that this Messiah is supposed to descend from him. And we're all, everybody. And he was a typical impetuous young man, in his 20s, I imagine. Okay, so now we get to Abigail, the wise woman. So one more paragraph, Susan.
Okay. Now, one of the young men told Abigail, Nabal's wife, saying, "Look, David sent his messengers from the wilderness to greet our master, and he reviled them. But the men were very good to us, and we were not hurt, nor did we miss anything as long as we accompanied them when we were in the fields. They were all a wall to us, both by day and night, all the time we were with them, keeping the sheep. Now, therefore, no one consider what you will do, for harm is determined against our master and against all his household, for he is such a scoundrel that one cannot speak to him."
So they're saying, look, these guys actually did give us some protection, and they were around, but I'm sure I suspect that's their routine. They do this. Nobody asked for protection. They come, we're going to protect you. Now pay us. It's kind of like, you read about that. All these different mafias say you need protection and the people have no choice.
Oh my God.
From us.
Protection. You need it. Okay. From us. So, but on the other hand, they say your husband, our master, is a scoundrel. He's horrible. No one can reason with him. No one can reason with him. So here comes Abigail. And what is her answer to the problem? It's interesting. If you ever watch Dr. Laura, listen, I listen to her sometimes, and she has this, I don't know if you agree with her, but I love to hear people's problems. So I listen to her radio show. And she always says men only need 3 things: food, sex, and back rubs. That's what they need.
This is true.
So here she is right away getting food. So who wants to read? Lori, you want to read?
Okay. Then Abigail made haste and took 200 loaves. Wait a minute. I'm missing. I just lost here it is. 200 loaves of bread, 2 skins of wine, 5 sheep already dressed.
Wait, hold on. Go ahead.
Okay.
Where are we? It's right here.
Yeah, I see it.
Okay. Right here.
Yeah, okay, 5
sheep.
seahs of roasted grain, 100 clusters of raisins, and 200 cakes of figs, and loaded them on donkeys. And she said to her servants, "Go on before me, see, I am coming after you." But she did not tell her husband Nabal.
Okay, hold on. So first of all, does anything strike you about this paragraph?
Yeah, she didn't tell her husband because he's a creep.
Okay, anything else? Penina?
His name Naval means a terrible person. It's like a dead body.
Right.
That means that he was really, really bad.
Okay.
And the story of the story kind of like reminds me also of when he had Bathsheba.
Yeah,
David
we
is
talk
not-
about that.
Yeah, David is not the saint over here. He has his eyes already wandering, like you said before. And he was a very complex person. And that person that was Naval, who his name says that he was, you know what Navala is? A dead body, like a corpse.
A rotting corpse.
It was so bad that, so she went behind his back. But like I said before, the story reminds us that David is not such a naive person, and he has a part in it, and probably going to figure out how to get rid of this guy. So that's
Okay, but is there anything else that you notice in this one paragraph that
okay.
struck me?
And she does it quickly,
Meaning what?
so she won't be noticed.
But I noted she has it all on hand.
And she has it in
Right.
hand, and lots of
It's a lot of
food.
food.
All these cakes, 200 fig cakes. It's not like they say she made them. They're already in her. She's so rich. I think about Avraham when he sees the, angels coming, he says, quick, slaughter a lamb, make some bread, do some this, let's prepare. She doesn't tell her servants, quickly, make food. It's like, okay, open my storeroom, which has enough food for a year or something,
Right.
and take out all this stuff. And then it's like, okay, why do you think she sent the food before her?
Because that's the first thing a man wants is the food. He played on a man's heart, and she was unhappy. And David's a legend.
Well, yeah, David possibly is, but I think you're right. Like first of all, they're on their way and they see the food coming, they're going to calm down.
Right, exactly.
Came first that may not, and then this beautiful woman comes behind. But the first thing is they see all this food coming toward them. It's going to like deflate some of that testosterone, I would say. and
make it safer for her.
Yes.
Is she depriving her own people of all this? It's an awful lot of food. Is she going to be depriving her own people from?
No.
He's got 1,000 goats and 3,000 sheep. So that's a lot of milk. That's a lot of, meat. And so, but if she doesn't feed them, they're going to take everything.
True.
So, it's like, all right.
But did she think her husband is a real idiot? For
she knows he's a bad guy, but she's married to him. And I said it probably was not her choice. She wasn't married off to him. She could have been married off to him when she was 12 years old, and now she's been with him for 20 years for all we know. So she knows him and she does run the house. So yes, Penina.
We know that most of David and Saul were picked up because they were shepherds. And a shepherd, why? Because they have this, supposedly, being a shepherd supposed to first show you leadership, and it takes care of things. And the sheep are very dear to them. So they think that if they are good with the sheep, they're also going to be good leading the people.
Right.
That caring and that leading. So that she takes those sheep, it's like she's giving him also in that moment, like kind of like authority and parts of her ships.
Yeah.
It's like some kind of a togetherness. Like, I know that you care for this, and I know you need food, and here we are. She kind of puts herself now on the same caring level as he is, supposedly because he was a shepherd to begin with.
Okay. I think that's a good comment. And let's look right where she is. Let me move this over. Wait, hold on. Then Abigail made haste. Okay. So who was reading? Lori, why don't you read a little more?
Okay,
So
so
it was.
so it was, as she rode on the donkey, that she went down under cover of the hill, and there were David and his men coming down toward her, and she met them. Now David had said, surely in vain I have protected all that this fellow has in the wilderness, so that nothing was missed at all that belongs to him. And he has repaid me evil for good. May God do so and more also to the enemies of David, if I leave one male of all who belong to him by morning light.
Okay, so you see where his head is.
Yeah.
And then now she appears. So as she's coming toward him, this is his mind, the food's coming, and then here she is. So Leslie, why don't you read? Because this is a nice, like, anti-feminist section that will.
And I like it. Now, when Abigail saw David, she dismounted quickly from the donkey, fell on her face before David, and bowed down to the ground. So she fell at his feet and said, on me, my lord, on me, let this iniquity be. And please let your maidservant speak in your ears and hear the words of your maidservant. Please let not my lord regard this scoundrel Nabal. Yeah, I'm not liking this. For as his name is, so is he. Nabal is his name, and folly is with him. But I, your maidservant, did not see the young men of my lord whom you sent.
Keep going.
Now, therefore, my lord, as the Lord lives and as your soul lives, since the Lord has held you back from coming to bloodshed and from avenging yourself with your own hand, now then, let your enemies and those who seek harm for my lord be as Nabal. And now this present, which your maidservant has brought to my lord, let it be given to the young men who follow my lord.
Okay, so I want to stop and tell you, this is part of this very famous speech of Abigail's. And if we notice, a lot of the women who we've looked at, or the women of significance, have speeches. They make important speeches in the text. I mean, certainly Deborah made a speech and a prophecy and then wrote an entire poem. And Miriam did the whole song at the sea. So she said something poetic. Hannah, if we remember when she talked to Eli the servant, Eli the priest about, I'm not drunk and I've prayed to God. There, in the mouth of these women come these very articulate, poetic, or evocative words, which I think is interesting that the writers gave these women voices. I know Susan is very pleased that I'm showing women with agency and stuff. And yes, they are very articulate and persuasive. And she says, what does she say? Let the sin be on me because I didn't know about you, and don't pay any attention to my husband. Forgive me and forgive this, and don't be a sinner. Okay, but now here's where the rabbis say is her prophecy, and while they call her a woman prophet, one of the prophets, in the next two paragraphs. So read these, Leslie, because this is what they say is her prophecy.
Okay.
28.
Please forgive the trespass of your maidservant, for the Lord will certainly make for my Lord enduring house, because my Lord fights the battles of the Lord, and evil is not found in you throughout your days.
Okay, so first, wait. So she's prophesying that his house, or his line, his lineage is going to live forever because he fights for God. And psychologically, I think this is brilliant. I do this with children who misbehave. I've learned this really works, whether as a teacher or even as a parent. When you tell them that they're good, that's not you. You're a good kid. I'm surprised because that's not you. You're really a great kid. You're really wonderful. So something must be wrong going on with you because that's not who you are. She's telling him, you're not an evil guy.
She's just being so manipulative. It is kind of nice.
It's brilliant. It's brilliant because he's listening to this and he ends up, you will find out, he marries her. he ends up she becomes his wife. And here is part of why, I think. Okay, so this is her prophecy. Keep going.
Yet a man has risen to pursue you and seek your life. But
That's
the life
King Saul. So she knows this. Go ahead.
and seek your life. But the life of my Lord shall be bound in the bundle of the living with the Lord your God, and the lives of your enemies he shall sling out as from the pocket of a sling.
Oh my God. Okay, we just need to talk about this for a minute.
Rabbi Susan,
Yes.
I just have a quick question. What is the evil that Nabal did? I seem to have missed that. He said, David says, I think he does. He says, I took such good care and I was so careful and all that. And now Nabal wants to do evil to me. I'm missing that. What is the evil?
Okay. He doesn't want to repay me. He doesn't want to honor me. He doesn't want to respect me. Now, these are egos. This is an ego thing. First of all, Nabal is probably a stingy guy and not well liked and probably not good to his people. But beyond that, David feels this ego thing. I mean, Putin, think about these people, or these leaders are, not that David's Putin, not that, but that, he feels very insulted. He feels that he gave him this service, and Nabal not only didn't give him food, but he said, who is he, a runaway slave? He dissed him, in this West Side Story, back and forth. Whether it's evil or not, Abigail knows that she needs to say that in order to assuage this guy who's coming with 400 armed men. So she's saying, oh, it's on me. Don't blame him. Because I don't think she cares so much about her husband as he said, I'm not going to let one man alive survive. We're going to kill every single man in his whole household. She's protecting them, and they came to her. And second of all, it's a way of saying, she's diverting. And then she's saying, you are going to live a long life, your family, you're honored, you support God. She's reinforcing his good qualities. That is going to hopefully change his mind. But what I think is really interesting is that she uses that image of the sling. And what does that remind you of? What is she referring to? Goliath. So she's saying, I know about you. I know your reputation. I know, like, God is going to take your enemies and sling them the way you did it to Goliath. And even, you can fight anything. So that imagery is, I think, very persuasive, and it has double entendres in it.
So if she is a prophet, does she know she's going to become his wife? And does she want that? Does she want to get away from her bad husband? And so he
dies. However, she didn't say she's a prophet. The rabbis said she was a prophet.
She doesn't really know.
I don't think Abigail thought she was a prophet, but the rabbis say, oh, you see this prophecy. But in a way, she did prophesize. She did seem to know, but also, a smart woman will say what she knows somebody wants to hear when she's, trying to, so it's not clear, or maybe she didn't realize she was a prophet. It's not like she went around as Abigail the prophet, but the rabbis say Hannah was a prophet because of the way she understood she would have a son. And she is prophesying. So let's just go on a little bit. So, all right, share. And then, okay, we're here. Okay, and then it says, and it shall come to pass, here she is prophesying, when the Lord has done for my Lord, what you say, when Adonai has done for my Lord, according to all the good that he has spoken concerning you. So she's saying, God spoke well of you and has appointed you ruler over Israel. So here is the prophecy. She says, you're going to be king of Israel. That this will be no grief to you, nor offense of the heart to you, my Lord, and that either that you have shed blood without cause or that my Lord has avenged himself. So she's saying, wow, someday you're going to be king, and you don't want to look back on this behavior and be ashamed of it or regret it or feel guilty that you killed all these people. So I'm trying to stop you from sinning because you're good, you're God's chosen one, and I'm trying to stop you. And Penina, the commentaries say, here's the difference between Bathsheba and Abigail. That Abigail stopped him from sinning and Bathsheba, for whatever reason, didn't. She's, if you know the story of David and Bathsheba, do you know it, Leslie? Okay, so when he became king and he had all these wives and he was on his palace, this is like later on in the story, he sees this beautiful woman taking a bath naked on her rooftop, and he lusts for her, and he finds out that she's married to, yes, Penina?
Uriah.
You're muted. You're muted. Penina, you're muted.
Uriah, I think his name was Uriah.
Uriah.
Okay. Abigail, okay, but okay. What was the question now?
No, I'm just saying that Abigail.
How did she become his wife? What happened to the husband?
His son, he drops dead. God kills him.
So he also dies. Okay.
Yeah. But
now,
I'm not talking about that sin. I'm saying that here she stops him from killing, saying,
right. Well, also you said about the prophecy. You know that there was a part where he won a war and Saul also, but the women and the crowd only cheered David more than Saul.
Yes.
So that's why she based it that the people likes him. And knowing that Saul was not a well person, she can see that how the crowd likes him when he came back, or they were all cheering for him, that he would become king eventually.
Right. It said like hundreds cheered for Saul and thousands cheered for David.
That's right.
Okay. So now, but let's just say, she says, you will, that this will be no grief to you, that you're not going to regret this or offense of the heart to my Lord, or you're going to feel really bad about yourself because you shed blood without cause. So I'm telling you, I'm stopping you, I'm begging you to look, you are the one who's going to be king. And she gives him all this stuff, and he says, blessed is the Lord God of Israel who sent you to meet me this day. And blessed is your advice, and blessed are you, because you have kept me this day from coming to bloodshed and from avenging myself with my own hand. So this is the good thing about David, and this happens over and over again.
Susan, excuse me, but Bathsheba, did she know that her husband was going to be sent to the front to die, and that David knew he was going to be killed? Now, it's so important to know, because if she knew, perhaps she would have stopped him. I feel that she never knew.
Well, in some way, he's considered very, well, okay, just to finish, Leslie, she's married, so he sends her husband to the front line
to get rid of him.
And he gets killed. And then he takes her, and they have a child, and the child dies. And that's a big punishment. The thing about David that we like is when he's called to account, he admits it and he repents. Yeah. So he's got, he's a real human being. He's like got an ego, and he's ready and this and that. And then when she points it out, this woman, and he goes, wow, thank you for stopping me from doing this. So that's the thing about David. He's such a complex, interesting, likable, probably sexy, powerful, masculine guy. And he's got some self-awareness, which, yes, Miriam.
Especially what you're saying is so correct, Susan, because we find that out when Nadav, his sort of personal prophet or an officer, comes to him and says to David about this terrible man that finds a woman and sends her husband to the front. And David says, oh my God, who was this man? And then Nadav answers him, Ata ha'ish.
You are the guy.
Exactly.
He does it differently. He says, there's a man who has all these sheep and lamb, and there's one man who has one little lamb that he loves so much and he cherishes. And the rich man takes the single lamb of the man and takes him for himself. And then David says, who is that? That's a terrible man. He should be punished. And he says, that's you. That's what you did with Bathsheba. That's what you did with Bathsheba. And then, so you're right. Exactly. So let's just continue this. So he says, you have kept me from avenging with my own hand, for indeed, as the Lord God of Israel lives, who has kept me back from hurting you, raping you, unless you had hurried to come meet me, surely by morning light, no males would have been left to Nabal. So David received from her hand what she had brought and said to her, go up in peace to your house. See, I have heeded your voice and respected your person. So there's about the physical. I didn't rape you. I would have. We would have raped all the women. I think that's what it's saying. Because why would he say I respected your person? Not respected you, but your body? Because that's what he's implying. Okay, so who hasn't read? Merle. Now Abigail went to Nabal. 36. Unmute.
I'm learning my way through my new computer. Let me find it. What number is it?
Verse 36.
Okay, now Abigail went to Nabal, and there he was holding a feast in his house, like a feast, like the feast of a king. And Nabal's heart was merry within him, for he was very drunk. Therefore, she told him nothing, little or much, until morning light. So it was in the morning, when the wine had gone from Nabal, and his wife had told him these things, that his heart died within him, and he became like a stone. Then it happened about 10 days after it, about 10 days, that the Lord struck Nabal and he died.
I feel like he had a stroke.
That's what it sounds like. Up further, it sounds like he died already.
Well,
And this was like
a stone, so he can, like a stroke, like paralyzed.
Right. That's what it sounds like.
Yeah, and then he died. So
yeah,
when she told him she had given 200 cakes and all this wine and blah 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 blah, he had a stroke.
There's a message there.
Yeah, and he died. So now continue. 39.
One thing that kind of emphasizes his evil. She told him these things. She told him that she took all of his storage and gave it to the enemies. That might be part of it, how to.
Exactly. Okay. So just continue, Merle. So when David heard that Nabal was dead.
1 minute. So when David heard that Nabal was dead, he said, blessed be the Lord who has pleaded the cause of my reproach from the hand of Nabal and has kept his servant from evil. For the Lord has returned the wickedness of Nabal on his own head. Amen. I guess that's the rock.
Right.
And then David can you move it up a little?
Yeah. And David sent and proposed to Abigail to take her as his wife. When the servants of David had come to Abigail at Carmel, they spoke to her saying, David sent us to you to ask you to become his wife. Well, what I love about this is he asked her. He didn't take her. He asked her.
He sent his people to ask her. It's not like,
Even so, it's not. It reminds me of the respect of Rebecca, when the servant came and said, will you come and be Isaac's wife? As opposed to Jacob and Lavan just said, give me your daughter as a wife. And he gave them. The father, or whatever gave. But here, like there's this respect for this woman. Will you marry me? I'm sending like my men to ask, will you marry me? That was like a formal, you don't want to be rejected. So you send people ahead of time.
Rabbi, speaking of getting married, I have a boyfriend who wants to become Jewish.
Wow, there you go.
And convert and get married at the temple. I need help with the wedding. I'll talk to you about it another time, but I just thought I'd let you know.
Great. What would have happened if she refused to become his wife? She wouldn't have had a choice. So this asking is just.
I don't know. I'm not sure. But, it's always better in those times to have a male. Listen, he was probably, there was probably sexual attraction already.
Yeah, he was probably a sexy guy.
Oh, yeah. And she was one of the most beautiful women in the land. And he was
she was married to somebody awful. So.
And she was married to a horrible man, and also she knows he's going to be king.
Right.
Just say no.
Right. Why would she refuse?
Yeah,
Except that she's not the first wife.
No brainer.
exactly. Then she arose, bowed her face to the earth, and said, "Here is your maidservant, a servant to wash the feet of the servants of my Lord." Oh, brother. Abigail rose in haste and rode. She got up quickly in haste and rode on a donkey attended by 5 of her maidens. And she followed the messengers of David and became his wife. And David also took Ahinoam of Jezreel. And so both of them were his wives. And he had another wife, but this is a whole other story. But Saul had given Michal, his daughter, David's wife, to Palti, the son of Laish. When he ran away, he disappeared. Saul gave his daughter to another man. And there's a whole story behind that. But that's the story of Abigail. And we never really hear about her again. She's never mentioned again, except in this one section. And yet she's considered one of the prophets of Israel, and beautiful, wise, clever. And once again, I love the stories of the women in the Tanakh, particularly. They're very evocative. We really learn a lot about the world they lived in. It's so beautifully written, like novels, like short stories. These are all like great short stories. So between Hannah, let's say Rachav, and Abigail so far, who do you like? Who do you prefer? What do you think of them? Who strikes you as the most? I don't know. Who do you like the best? Let's just do it on that level.
I like Abigail, but I love Esther better, but I love Abigail. But look at Bathsheba. She must have been a great looking woman too. What can I say?
Well, look at her. I mean, Esther I like, but Esther basically does what she's told for a very long time.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Girl, here's the thing. This is a woman with experience. And I like that we see a married woman, an experienced woman, a woman who she's beautiful, but there's so many levels of her intelligence in this little story of how
I agree.
Did she have children?
Probably. Yes, she had one son. Actually, we have a little bit of time there.
I mean, with Nabal.
No. But where is this? Abigail Commentary, and you all got this, so you can get it. When it talks about her, they say that Nabal means a fool or a boor also.
Nabal means what? Would you repeat that?
It means a fool or a boor, it says. A fool or a boor. I mean, you all have this. It's, Abigail intervenes to prevent a bloodbath in her speech. And she says she pretends that God will establish a sure house. Okay, so we talked about all that. Epilogue. Here's the epilogue. Oh, yeah, here's one interesting thing. I love this. Because of the hint to David, the mysterious cause of Nabal's death, and no record of mourning her boorish husband, some scholars and modern creative renditions have read Abigail as conniving, because she didn't mourn her husband at all. She went and got married like very quickly. Yet there is no hint of illicit behavior on her part. This is right here where rather, the story stands in stark contrast to the Bathsheba episode, when the king takes a woman married to another man while he is serving the king fighting the Lord's battles. And David has him killed on the front in order to cover the adultery. Oh, I guess they slept. Oh, that's right. They slept together before the guy was killed.
Yes.
So yes, Bathsheba committed adultery. So she didn't stop David and say, oh, I don't, this is wrong, or I don't want you to commit a sin or whatever. She just did it. So that's the big difference.
Amen.
And says, in the Abigail story, on the other hand, the woman is married to an evil husband and prevents him from murdering Nabal and all the males of the household, as David acknowledges. As Adele Berlin, she's a great feminist biblical commentator. The Abigail story contains no illicit sex, though the opportunity was present. The Bathsheba story revolves around an illicit relationship. In the Abigail story, David, the potential king, is seen as increasingly strong and virtuous, Whereas in the Bathsheba story, the reigning monarch shows his flaws ever more overtly and begins to lose control of his family. So like the Bathsheba story is the beginning of his downfall. And then just in the epilogue, Abigail is present with David in Hebron when he is publicly inaugurated king, and she bears him a son called Chiliav, meaning according to Chiliav, according to his father, perhaps to assert David's paternity is unambiguous. And the meaning of her own name then takes on new resonance, meaning my father's joy, Abigail, or my father rejoices, from the Hebrew root Gail. Yet the son Chiliav never becomes a contender for the throne. And beyond this episode, Abigail plays no part in the court history. So that's the story of Abigail. And I love her. Yes, Penina.
Okay.
And
But
that
still,
is-
they're showing you every time that the husbands were really not, I don't know how to explain it, not exactly really nice or good.
Honorable, maybe.
And every time there is food involved, that they eat a lot or they don't give the food or blah, blah, blah. It shows you characteristics of a person, that's what was important to him and he was drinking. When it comes to Bathsheba, it's really hard to tell what was really going on there, because after all, Solomon was the son of Bathsheba and he's the one who got to be the next king.
I know. You're right. I think we should read Bathsheba next time.
Yeah, so it's very complex to see that may not be necessarily that the husbands were such angels or something like that, or good, that even Uriah, he wasn't maybe making love to his wife, didn't pay attention to her, that's why she was barren. Who knows? We don't know.
There's a lot about Uriah's character we'll look at.
But when I'm looking at the result, the end result, you have to kind of like do some kind of deductions and reorganization of your thought to think that maybe Uriah deserved it.
But we'll find out. Let's talk about that next time.
Did David love any of his wives?
He loved Bathsheba. He loved them
And
all.
Abigail was just, spoils from his venture.
I think
David was a big opportunist, and he also loved men. He loved Amnon, and when Amnon died, he said, your love was greater than a love of a woman.
That's Jonathan.
Jonathan.
Yeah, we can look at that one too. We should look at Bathsheba and Jonathan. That's
he
David.
Was very complex and self-serving, and he had an ambition, and that was it.
Which makes
Did he get better as he grew older?
Did he get better? No. He got, well, we'll talk about it. I mean, we spent like how much, what was it, Susan, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, we studied that whole David story. Do you remember that? You're muted.
Yeah. We studied the David story.
Yeah. All right. Well, maybe we'll study the David story next year. The whole story of all his relationships, because
that would be great.
His kids his son rapes his daughter.
Right.
There's a lot. Yes, Miriam.
But Abigail took care of herself.
She did.
She ended up having a nice life. She lived in court. She didn't have to be, the hostess or whatever, but she was good.
She was
Hostess, I love it.
Yes, Miriam.
Of Abigail later on, not in the beginning, we know that story. Is that in the Tanakh or is it in the Midrash?
This story
is Tanakh, but they talk about Abigail later on.
There's nothing more about Abigail.
No. So how do we know that she had this son called Chiliav?
Yes, that's a few chapters later on. That's in the Tanakh.
Oh, that is in the Tanakh.
Yes, that's in the Tanakh.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how did her life end?
They don't tell us, but she was married to the king. She had one son. He had many wives and many children. I'm sure he grew up with his brothers. They were all princes, and princesses. And ultimately there was a terrible rift, but not with this one, with Tamar and Avshalom and that whole story, which we'll read about. Okay, so that's good. Next year, we will do the whole David story from Goliath all the way to his death. And in his death, when he's dying, and he's an old man, he asks for a young teenage girl to warm his bed.
Oh my God.
He didn't sleep with
They're
her.
all the same.
Okay.
Okay.
Don't worry about it. All right, everyone. Have a great
Have a
week.
nice
Thank
vacation.
you.
Well, no, I'll see you
Oh,
before
I mean, I'll see you one more time.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay.
See you in 2
בעומר
weeks.
tonight, so חג
Okay.
שמח.
2 weeks.
Love you. Talk to you later.
Okay.
Bye,
Talk to
ladies.
you soon.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you. I love you all. Bye.
One
You
more
too.
question, Susan. Okay, she's gone. I wanted to know, would you know, Penina,
What?
Tamar, who slept with her brother, was
Didn't
this
he
the same
rape her?
Tamar?
He raped her.
That was the daughter-in-law of Yehuda? Was this the same Tamar?
No,
It's a
Or was it
different
the gate and was
later.
impregnated by her father?
Generations later.
Tamar and Avshalom were brother and sister, and
Right, and
Amnon
I
was a son of another woman from another wife.
But
And
is
he
this
raped her.
the
and
same
Avshalom
Tamar?
killed him.
This is my question.
It's
Is
not
this
the
the
same
same,
Tamar. No.
not a different?
I
Okay.
don't
Not the same to Miriam. Tamar with Judah was before in the
Right.
Tanakh.
You're right.
Tamar with David comes later, like in King.
She was his daughter. Yeah.
I
The
see.
other one was not.
Okay, this was another Tamar who was the daughter-in-law of Yehuda.
Yes, but
Not
that's
the same woman.
Right.
in the Torah.
That's a couple of generations later.
Yeah, generations.
I see. Okay.
Two Tamars, both of which sleep with, not with the husband, so.
Okay.
Tamar was raped actually by Amnon.
Yeah, she was raped.
Literally
It was
raped, and
horrible.
she became kind of like depressed and schizophrenic or whatever you
Right.
want to
This
call
was
it.
Amnon and Tamar,
Right.
but you said Avshalom. Did you
Avshalom
make
was
the
her brother, and he killed Amnon because he did this.
Okay, and then Avshalom was killed by his hair.
That's right.
His
Because-
half brother.
Yeah.
And
Then
that's
the
when,
king was mad that he
That's when
killed-
David said, B'ni, B'ni.
That's right. That's right. That's it. Okay.
David
Listen,
is
tonight
not-
is Lag BaOmer. I don't know if you know that. That's the 33rd day of the Omer. There is a commemoration of the 10 rabbis who died by the Romans and never refused to defile the name of God. So they died with the Shema and their
And
Yeah.
Rabbi
so
Akiva was one of them.
Hillel and all these
That's right.
by the Romans. So that's the rebellious kind of like, and they hid in the caves to study Torah and blah, blah, blah. So today, this evening is the commemoration of the holiday, Lag BaOmer. If you just want to know, yeah. It's considered to be in Israel, they're coming with torches and with all kind of stuff, and they combine a lot of shuls together, and they do a lot of dancing and stuff. It's kind of like celebrating the Torah because the people kind of like gave their lives for it.
And is this when they have the campfires?
Yes,
Yes.
and barbecues and
And
stuff.
they go to Meron?
They go to Moriah, to the mountain. There is a group of people in Israel, they still go to the mountain that they used to go during the biblical time, and they have
Right.
they stay there, they pray, they have food together, and the Shomronim, they call themselves. It's like a cult. It's called from Shomron. Shomron is a part of Israel, so they all consider themselves. Okay, you
Hi,
guys.
ladies. I have to go pick a grandchild up from school.
Nice.
Good
Nice.
seeing you.
Bye.
If you're at Temple Friday night, I will be there
Nice.
this
Okay,
Friday night.
nice.
So-
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.